Hello, survivors, and welcome to Not Recommended. This is a show where we discuss all games in the Resident Evil umbrella, but specifically the reviews left by people who were a little bit disappointed in what they were offered. We'll be perusing Metacritic and the dreaded Steam community pages to bring you the hottest takes, big quotation marks, across the web. My name is James, and joining me today is First Aid Spray's famous funny man, Steve.
I am neither famous nor funny. Hi, everybody.
I realize it's been a bit since we've done one of these episodes. I've listened to your feedback, and there's going to be some changes with this episode compared to the original one in terms of the editing. I am listening to you, and we will make this a regular thing, I promise. Also, I do want to remind folks as well that what you will hear from us or from reviews are just opinions about video games. Okay, it's all in good fun. Like, we don't need to have any arguments. I mean, you can debate if you want to, but, you know, no name calling. So today we're going to be exploring the inventory nightmare that is Resident Evil 0. And keeping with the flow of the show, we won't be looking at the reviews criticizing the inventory, because I'm pretty sure it's universally hated, right, Steve?
Generally speaking, yeah. The item box is a well-loved and well-missed piece of kit in this game.
Yeah, it's tough. But, like, if you were just to make a video about reviews about the inventory system in RE0, we'd be here all day. So we've tried to get reviews that are more talking about the other aspects of the game. Some things we might agree with, and some things we might not agree with. And if you agree or disagree, then please let us know in the comments. Yeah, and like, to bring some balance, and so the spotlight isn't completely on our fellow gamers out there, we'll be doing an additional review at the end from a big accredited source at the time of release as well. So, Steve, should we jump straight in?
We certainly can. Okay, our first review is a 20 by IB Times UK. A joyless game. Every section feels like a tedious lateral thinking puzzle. The farmer has a fox, a chicken and some grain, but can only carry one at a time. And the locations and creatures are half-heartedly designed. If you haven't played it, it provides valuable insight into where Resident Evil, and perhaps games at large, went wrong over the past decade or so. Other than that, it feels like work.
A joyless game? That's a bit harsh.
A bit. I would say, I mean, straight out of the gate, we've got a 1 out of 10, a 20. Sorry, no, a 1 out of 5, 2 out of 10, Steve. Do basic math. Joyless is a bit much for me personally. Yeah. But that's because, I mean, the aesthetics draw me in. You know? I think the puzzles, I think they might be onto a bit of a small nugget of truth. They're not the most complex, but...
They're not, but at the same time, like... I mean, you say the farmer has a fox and a chicken has some grain, blah, 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 but that's literally how all Resident Evil puzzles are.
2 puzzles come to mind. Yeah. One in this game and one in RE1. In Resident Evil 0, there's one where you have to do a lighter and, like, set on so various, like, lights around animals that are meant to be, like, the food chain. So, like, you know, snake beat this, deer beat this, lion beat this.
Right.
And then there's the painting puzzle in RE1 where it's like, you know, got to figure out the age from birth to death. But otherwise, it's not really that complex, just tedious.
Yeah, and that's a mainstay of the Resident Evil franchise, I feel like. Like, I think we like, I go into these, when I look at these, I go into these and think, well, how does this compare to the rest of the franchise? And I look at that aspect of it and go, it's very similar, but I do get the tediousness of it. I mean, this game is tedious underline in certain aspects.
See, I've got to be honest, I feel like the more I talk about it with you, the more I think, is it any more of an offender than, like, say, the Resident Evil 3 water puzzle or the gem puzzle?
Yeah.
But not really. I think par for the course, maybe. There's always been naturally, like, you know, a few slot item A into slot B or whatever puzzles, but then there's these kind where you have to read a note, figure out a pattern, and, you know, decipher the pattern in whatever way, shape, or form.
Yeah, they've also put, like, locations and creatures are half-heartedly designed. I disagree. Times 10,000. Leech. The leeches look so good. Yeah, they might be annoying to deal with, but they're not meant to be nice. Then there's the Scorpion boss, like, which is very unique. To say they're half-heartedly designed as well. I mean, those leeches were some of the best looking things we saw at the time, like in a video game. Yeah, I don't know where this person comes from with that. Do you agree with them?
I'm going to try and meet them halfway because, like, for example, it's saying that locations aren't very good.
Right.
The train is literally the piece of media that any survival horror game on a train. Yeah. This is the game they will reference.
That's true. Yeah.
I know we haven't got many survival horror games on trains, but this is the one they would reference. And it looks majestic. It's some kind of fancy two-floored thing. To say it's like a set of corridors sewn together, it still manages to have its own little intricate maze when it factors in the second floor. I honestly feel like, I've got to be honest, the bosses and monsters are a bit mid for me.
Okay.
Because I do think the Scorpion is a neat idea, right? Generally speaking. But then you've got a giant centipede, a giant bat, a giant blob-shaped nightmare thing that is the Queen Leech. But then you've also got some funky stuff like the Eliminator monkeys, which clearly, go across animal testing boundaries a bit, but they fill a necessary survival horror gap. Like, it's not unlike 28 Days Later, where the opening of that film has animal testing monkeys that pretty much caused the entire apocalypse.
Yeah, and they're terrifying as well.
Yes, they are.
I remember in Zero them being really, really tough and scary.
Tanky. They'll take, shotgun blast after shotgun blast.
Yeah.
And the big standout monster for me isn't the Queen Leech. It doesn't get enough lore notes, but the prototype tyrant, the T-001, that's basically the final boss from Resident Evil 1 if it was knackered, busted, and not quite finished.
It's still got half its battery life.
Yeah. Someone's left it on charge for too long. It's just got no pizzazz, no oomph.
It's a Samsung from 2010.
Yeah, but then again, talking about it, as much as I'm not a big fan of the locust monsters, the Leech Man in itself as a concept's cool, right? A mimic, a person you think is a person, then it's not, and it's like this green blob-shaped man, and then it's this annoying black swirling storm of leeches.
Yeah,
concept good.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, yeah. Now you say it, because when I think about it, yeah, I remember the monkeys. I remember the Scorpion, I remember the train, I remember. I remember the outside sections quite clearly, but everything else in the game is very misty in my head. So yeah, I do get it. I think they're being a bit harsh, by saying that everything is, but these are generalizations. And to finish it off, IB Times says if you haven't played it, it provides valuable insight to where Resident Evil and games at large went wrong around that time. I think there were things they were doing right, and they were trying to do things right around that time. But yeah, I kind of agree with them. When it, again, especially comes to the inventory system, some of the buddy stuff is a bit wonky, but we'll talk more about that later because there's more reviews to come. But what do you think, Steve? Is it a test of the time?
It literally is the last of the fixed camera Resident Evil games before RE4 exists. So everything's showing a little bit more wear and tear. Yeah. I think there are other mechanics that you've mentioned just there that will be brought up in other reviews. And yeah, so it's fraying at the edges. Obviously I will always love a fixed camera Resi, even this one. But you can definitely see it's fraying in the wings a little bit.
All right. So that's our first review. Let us know what you guys think. Next, we're going to have a Steam review, and we won't be showing names because these are just regular gamers like you and me. But this is a Steam review. Someone has not recommended it, and just 2 words: aged poorly.
It's only 15 hours on record as well, James. So they beat the game.
Yeah. I don't agree with this at all. I don't think this game has aged poorly. You look at the other games that came around, like RE4, for instance, that is celebrated for how good it looks, and RE0 isn't that far from it in terms of visually. In terms of mechanics, that's up in the air, isn't it? Because
comparing this to RE3 and CV, it's probably its most direct competitors. it's got a partner switching system, 2 characters at the same time, and a whole belly of new mechanics.
Yeah.
I'd say
they were trying to do something new. A lot of things new.
It's weird though.
And it might be the game that kind of inspired a lot of games that we've got recently because of all those little mechanics. I mean, say recently, but the past 15 years. That's recently to us. Okay, we're old.
There was an indie survival horror game that Tormented Souls, I want to say it was, right? That pretty much I don't know if it took anything directly from Resident Evil 0, but that too was set mostly in a medically orientated, repurposed manner, which is not too dissimilar from the training facility in this. And I kind of constantly got that kind of evocative gothic science lab vibe from that, and it reminded me of RE0. And while RE0 itself still gets referenced inside the Resident Evil universe in some way, shape, or form, normally in side games like your pachinko machines and Tekken, it's still there. Rebecca Chambers is still relevant, and she still seems to Vendetta. She still had the same. No, I wanted to say gi. No, it's just the same kind of silhouette: green shirt, white body armor.
Yeah. Yeah, green.
But then the leeches and things like that, we haven't really seen since the partner swapping system. I feel like the last time we saw that was probably Revelations 2, Resident Evil Revelations 2. So it's not dead. Mechanically, there's clearly still surface use for the mechanics.
Yeah, I would say I think if to put a critic's word on it, I think experimental is probably a good way to kind of underline it, because a lot of stuff was experimental. It hadn't been done before in this frame. And with experimental stuff, some stuff doesn't hit. But I think aged poorly is it's a big generalization for the game. But yeah, put some more into your reviews, guys, so we can make more content.
Well, again, it's 2002, and just before shall we say, the great RE4 comes and redefines what a third-person action game is, and Resident Evil as a whole for a good long time. Survival horror was kind of in a lull, so I could see it as the precipice of.
Yeah.
But saying it's aged poorly in hindsight, considering the current gen, no way.
I remember, just to finish that one, I remember when we played this, Steve, back in 2016, 2017, and I remember just really loving it and how it looked. I was like, wow, this is actually aged really good. Really well. I mean, it was a HD remaster, I think. But
it still looked good on GameCube for the most part, really.
Yeah.
There was just AI upscaling. Well, not the horrible kind of AI we're scared of these days, guys. No, we're talking about the kind of filter that you'd use on the other remaster of RE1.
So next, Steve, we have a Steam community review, not recommended.
Would you like me to read this one? I can do
Yes,
that.
please. Yeah, we'll do it in turn.
Essentially remake, but worse in every way. With a story that adds nothing to the Resident Evil universe. Billy Cohen is pretty hot, though.
Okay. Essentially remake, but worse in every way. Ooh. I know how much the RE community loves Resident Evil, so I will not come between that. Again, just big generalizations with the review.
Hey, for me, saying it has no value kind of seems a bit harsh.
Yeah.
Worse in every way, adds nothing, and just a vapid comment about how Billy is hot. That's yes, Billy is okay. I'd say rocks a mullet somehow and isn't disgusting. I kid.
He is the original Gladiolus.
Yeah, no, he's way cooler than Gladiolus. He doesn't get nasty halfway through the game for no reason. Hashtag FF15. There are things that are different. I feel like if this had a bit more, because clearly they was developed around the same time. They came out the same year. But if RE0 had, for example, Crimson Heads and defense items on top of basically RE1 remakes gimmicks, I feel like it wouldn't have been hated as much. I feel that's what I kind of want to meet them halfway. I think that's what they're getting at with worse in every way. Because the partner zapping system, while it's still an intricate new thing for Resident Evil, Not quite as good as stabbing things inside of Ed with a knife. But the story, no, I'd say that the story's fine.
Yeah, I think the story's great. Yeah, like I think this part of this review is probably the one I vehemently disagree with, because you're getting an insight into what Rebecca is capable of. You're getting an insight into the worldwide view without actually being in it, and who Billy is, and how crap the world's been to Billy. Yeah, and then we get a founder reveal. Right? Umbrella founder?
Yeah. James
reveal.
Marcus.
And it's like, that's huge. Like, to say that this adds nothing to the story is silly. And you can also get some, like, further lore added from the future Resident Evils in this as well, like the Wesker Birkin scene, as well, which is really cool to see them working together. Yeah, so this is wild. This is a wild take.
There are various things I would change about Resident Evil 0, but in and of itself, like the fact that it makes Rebecca out to be a very competent and confident rookie, the dynamic between her and Billy is built upon. Yeah, she's probably a little bit too quick to trust him, all things considered. Like, it doesn't matter if you kill 23 people. Yes, it bloody does, Rebecca. I'm sorry. If he's an actual murderer, a war criminal, it does kind of matter a little bit. James Marcus, the actual, like, the way he's portrayed and his I don't know what the word would be, merging with the Queen Leech, bit ridiculous. But the idea of having yet another Umbrella founder who was doing grim, dark research on his own students, yeah, kind of cool. The fact that they have a vendetta and they've come back from the grave to basically try and destroy everything, cool. The motivational speech that I quote a lot of the time on the podcast, bit lame, but I'll allow it. Like, that's okay. I think Wesker and Birkin are kind of somehow underutilized, despite they're a big thing, because their whole dynamic is meant to be built along here. You essentially see 3 or 4 scenes, and they're mostly staring at camera trying to figure it out. But the point is, before that, we had nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Nothing.
We just had notes.
Yeah. As is the nature of a prequel, it shines light on what came before. Does some of it not make sense? Sometimes. Like a certain elevator the community gets upset about.
Oh, yeah. But I remember you telling me about that.
Again, I'd take it over a complete black hole, and Wesker's just a prick, and the virus just came from Magic Land.
Yeah. Okay, next, I'll read this one. This is another Steam community review. Oh, also, yes, Billy is hot. I agree with you. Okay. You got 1 out of 3. That's not bad. So yeah, this next one is horrible boss fights, beyond scarce ammo and health, no item boxes, weak puzzles, just a tedious backtracking nightmare with a lame story and boring monster designs that do not scare or spook in the slightest. Easily the worst mainline RE, in brackets, that isn't RE6, game by a mile. Didn't like it when it came out on the GameCube, and this remaster has done nothing to improve the game or my opinion of it. Its only hope for redemption is a full-blown remake.
Oof.
They went hard.
Not a fan, I think. I mean, that's the nature of not recommended, but also oof.
Ooh. So I do. I won't go over the things we've already mentioned, but like somebody else has already mentioned horrible boss fights, for instance, and we half and half agree on that one. Beyond scarce ammo and health. Okay, but this is a survival horror game. What did you expect?
I'm going to say this only once, James. Okay, I get 1 per episode.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. It's a skill issue. Because you can find ammo and health bloody everywhere if you know where to look. Not every monster needs to be engaged with, as is survival horror tradition. Okay? Open your eyes. Don't leave shotguns hanging around. God, sorry. I know I'm being very, very, very gatekeepy right now, but they slam this game and then say accept RE6 so they could slam 2 games in the same review. Unacceptable.
You don't get to do that.
You don't get to do that here. That's my job, not yours. I've
already mentioned boring. Somebody else has mentioned boring monster designs. but they said that they were not scared or spooked. I think that is a very personal thing. Like as we've said, I was terrified by the leech people, and I was terrified of the monkey people. The monkey people? No, the monkeys, eliminators. Yeah, the scorpion was also scary for me. So just be a little bit more. Just explain a little bit more about like what you don't like instead of just going, "I hate this game." I mean, this is the Resident Evil community, so.
Hey, there are some lovely people in the Resident Evil community, and I will not have that slander. For me, scary moments in RE0, it's hard to picture because obviously I played it back in 2002, which is 22 years ago. My God.
It's okay. It's fine. It's dog years.
It's like the Centurion, the giant centipede. Like, I have been the worst possible situation where Rebecca had all the guns and then I'm completely unequipped. That's a terrifying experience. Anytime a hunter appears, that's a terrifying experience. My personal favourite are the cutaway moments where it's like cutting around you've pressed a switch or something, or you're about to trigger an event, and a creature appears but isn't actively going to attack you straight away, but you know it's there. And it's that moment of apprehension where there is a threat coming. It's not quite here yet, but it's going to get you. I love those little moments to be creepy.
Yeah.
But I will kind of meet them halfway and say it's not the scariest, is it? There are some cool bits though, like the first leech transformation when Rebecca interacts with that guy. That's kind of spooky.
Yeah.
Sephiroth in a dress on a hill. That's kind of spooky. Singing at you.
It's like that weird eldritch spookiness, but also going, it was, yeah, made me feel things. It was very odd. But I liked it, and it was, it made me, it did put me on edge, especially when you heard who they were as well. I feel like this person, what was that game that first-person shooter Resident Evil game we played?
There's a few. Do you mean Dead Aim or Survivor?
No, not neither of those two. It was the one that was awful, where you had to stand in points and capture the flag.
Oh God,
it was terrible. Anyway.
It
wasn't Operation Raccoon City. It was Umbrella something. Umbrella Corps. Like, this person clearly hasn't played Umbrella Corps.
Well, definitely not.
Like, because I'm not a big fan of RE6, but that is by far the worst Resident Evil game I've ever played. It's not Resident Evil, so yeah, just yeah.
I'm gonna take two more stabs at this review for you, James.
Yeah, go ahead.
They're saying that they didn't like it on the GameCube. That's totally fair. But saying the remaster has done nothing. They added the same accessibility control scheme for people who aren't good with fixed cameras in the remake with this one, the analog control scheme. And I believe there's an extra lower difficulty mode. I could be wrong there. And they added Wesker mode, which is basically overpowered, superpowered mode. You have to beat the game once to use it, but it's an extra gameplay mode. They added some things. Do they improve it? Not necessarily for me, but accessibility is always cool, so shush. As for Hope for Redemption and a full-blown remake, yeah, I don't see it happening myself, but maybe.
I wouldn't say no. And also,
more Resident Evil's always good.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that improvements they can make with a redo, like a remake. We have so many resources now to help us make these games better, and Capcom do such a great job with it now that I can see it. But that's another video. So next review is a really long one, Steve.
Thanks, James.
Another Steam community review. Go ahead.
Okay. Huge Resident Evil fan and wanted to play through them all in order, but I have to say I am not a fan of this game. Really ruining my mood for the rest of the games. Definitely my least favourite Resident Evil game. Give it a solid 2 out of 10 or 3 out of 10. Just a boring game from start to finish. Lots of backtracking, and having to do it with 2 characters is annoying as fuck. You can't run with both because they get grabbed and will get themselves killed the whole game or waste your ammo. They respawn enemies in places you have already been and love to spawn the annoying infected monkeys that you can't see till they are already hitting you and stun lock you. Then you lose 30 minutes to an hour of your time. Also, the annoying leech monsters, they can eat a blank ton of ammo that force you to use your grenade launcher on them or just run by trying to not get hit. Honestly, 10 hours in and I don't feel like finishing it. Edit. Finish the game because I had to see the end. Still don't recommend the game. People say the game Rebecca doesn't even remember this all happening. We'll go for all the achievements and all Resi games, but this one honestly ruined my taste to want to try and play the first Res.
I like that we started in Brummie, we got into the middle with just Broad Midland, and then we went to Brummie at the end again.
You gotta go around, you can't just stay in one accent.
Wow, this person really disliked this game.
I'm appreciating the lore, James. This one's got lore to it.
In fact, they told us about 6 times that they disliked this game in the first 4 sentences. Yeah, wow. Whew. Steve, take it away.
Okay, right. The fact that they talk about infected monkeys back stun locking them and losing 30 minutes, that hits me home. That's a story of pain and suffering. Okay, and the leech monsters that eat a shit ton of ammo and then you have to use a grenade launcher on them. Ooh, we might have to bleep that, sorry.
I think we're good on YouTube, aren't we?
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah. But it's the fact that this is an ongoing battle of reviewer versus game that I kind of appreciate. I know they clearly don't like it, but at the time of finishing it 10 hours into 17 hours played, they obviously persevered. And for that, I give them props.
Yeah, well done. Yeah. Well done, unnamed review person.
Unnamed review person. You didn't like it, but you toughed it out. For that, you have my respect. Finish the game, and they still don't recommend it. That's fair. All things considered, that's fair. But going for all the achievements, I'm going to just brag for a second and say I've done it. Completed it, mate.
Completed it? Get good.
Yeah, hashtag get good. The respawning enemies in places and the general stresses of it seem to be the main takeaway from this compared to stuff we've already seen. What do you think?
I like that this person waited just over a week. He was like, I'm gonna sit on this for a week. And then I'm gonna have to freaking complete this game. I'm a Resident Evil true fan. I have to.
It's the integrity of it, though. Like they literally they edit and they honestly admit to editing it. Like that's there is a story to this review I kind of appreciate more than the ones we've had so far. There's lore, perseverance, a true human struggle against leechmen that take all your ammo and monkeys that stun lock you to death.
Also, this person is bringing other people's reviews into this review. We'd appreciate if you didn't do that. People even say after the game, Rebecca doesn't even remember this all happening. Ha ha. It can be easily explained. That my opinion, and again, these games are up for because they are pieces of art. They're up for interpretation. My opinion is that 1, Rebecca didn't want to put herself and Billy in the line of fire with her superiors, which we know she has great respect for. Mm-hmm. And 2, girls going through some traumatic events. So yeah, I completely understand. Like if she either didn't or her brain defensively blocked all that stuff out, so she didn't do it. Yeah, I mean, even though this person is really like vitriolic in what they're saying, it's like someone bashing their head against like a Dark Souls boss or something.
Yeah.
And their raw feelings are coming out in this as it's happening,
I kind of hope that they do persevere, because at the end where it says that it's ruined their taste to play the first Resident Evil, I kind of hope they still did.
Yeah. So they put here, really ruining my mood for the rest of the games. I feel like that is a problem, and it isn't a game problem. You catch my drift? Like if one game ruins a franchise for you, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you just don't love the franchise anymore. Like, so, but I know you don't because you went back a week later and played it. You love this franchise. And we love this franchise too. So I'm glad that it didn't ruin the rest of the games for you because I imagine you continue playing. This review was made last year, so it's quite recent as well.
There's it's the story to it. I feel the conviction that we haven't seen quite in a while. This feels primarily more from the heart, like you said. It's I want to see how they do with Elden Ring.
All right. So our next one is I think it's from a private account, but it's on Metacritic. It's a 60. One thing I want to mention is that it was kind of hard to find negative reviews on Metacritic about this game. What I'm trying to go for is like 50 and below, but I put this in because there was a few things we can agree and disagree with. So here we go. If you're hungry for more of that classic gameplay that involves backtracking, hunting down statues and keys to solve cryptic puzzles, and exploring enclosed spaces with fantastic horror movie camera angles, Resident Evil 0 will satisfy that hunger. It's a wonderful Resident Evil game with a few drawbacks, but even though it has been remastered with so much love and care, it will still be that one game in the series that people eventually forget about. That last line is like a stab to the back.
The thing is, like, all things considered, excluding maybe that's probably mostly on the money. Me. Like, it's very much like if you're into the classic vibe of Resident Evil, traditional fixed camera Resident Evil, they're not far off.
Yeah.
Doesn't really talk about much about the item management or the character swapping mechanics, which are normally the big bugbears, though. And knocking it to basically a 6 out of 10 by calling the game forgettable seems a little harsh.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I think like saying something is forgettable, considering we still talk about it, and lore that it's put down is still, spoken about and appreciated. I think that might be. Is it hyperbole? Like when I think it might be a little bit of that. Yeah, because I mean, everyone remembers that if you know Resident Evil, you know the mainline games, and you'll always include Resident Evil 0 because it does have important things to it. I do see where they're coming from, and I like that they put like a positive spin, to it. They're like, basically what I'm reading here for the first 9% of this review is if you like Resident Evil games, you'll love this.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. But if you don't like Resident Evil games, you might not. But so many games have taken inspiration from Resident Evil, so I think it would still work for a lot of people, even those who don't, get on with Resident Evil. Might not be the first thing we recommend to people, though. It's one like we did. It will be like, oh, we could probably do this game, but we could probably not put it. But we could probably not play it, but we probably will. Because you could leave it out. Yeah, you could leave it out if you wanted to, but yeah.
Starting with a prequel is always a rough thing for non fans of said thing. So I would echo the idea that maybe don't start with the prequel first on your first time out.
Because there's so much context you're missing.
Exactly. It's a recontextualizer, which is its main strength, I guess.
So the next one is for you, Steve, and it's specifically this is the GameCube one, but I mean that doesn't really matter all that matter. I've been creating these so we choose just basically based on the game itself rather than the system it's on. But this one is from Game Critics.
The bottom line is that Resident Evil Zero's title perfectly describes the content and play value of the game itself. Bit harsh. A little bit harsh. No value to be had out of a 5 out of 10 game. Mixed messages.
I don't think people know how to review games, Steve.
I mean, in fairness, this is probably like the main tagline of a review, but it's what's on there.
Yeah, it's like, perfectly describes the content and play value. I suppose, you know, there was one thing I was seeing a lot of, and that is people didn't want to dive back into the game. So I'm guessing there is some merit to the play value of it, the replay value of it.
I would say there is more if you want to go looking. Like there is basically 1.5 bonus modes, and then several difficulty settings where they remix a few enemies.
Right.
But mechanically speaking, on a purely content and play value, as the review says, it's a little bit low. But I won't say it's 0.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to kind of review this review because they're saying that there's nothing, there are no redeeming qualities about this game, yet they're giving it a 5 out of 10, like you said. And that's
mixed messages, isn't it? Really,
that's tough. Yeah, that's tough to review. So we'll just skip to the next one. Make a real review, game critics.
Followed by James.
Oh God, here we go. So the next one is the next one is very near and dear to my heart. It's a Steam community review, and it is the Dark Souls 2 of Resident Evil.
Well,
so by the Dark Souls 2 of Resident Evil, do you mean the underappreciated game of Resident Evil? Because that's what Dark Souls 2 is. Now, I don't want to get into like a rant about this, but I think this is not the kind of thing you were hoping for, you wanted to kind of put forward. Because Dark Souls 2 is a fantastic game in my opinion. It just wasn't given enough love by the fans because Miyazaki-san wasn't originally behind it. Hot take from me. But yeah, like it had redeeming qualities just like Resident Evil 0 does.
Does that mean then that the train is Majula?
Yeah,
it's like the standout bit, isn't it?
Yeah, seek lest.
I'm trying to think. Is it the hardest Resident Evil on its hardest setting?
Well, 0.
Yeah, because Resident Evil 0 on hard is very hard. Like, we're talking, you have to manage your ammo quite a lot.
Yeah.
Or not get hit as well, which, you could be skilled to offset it. But definitely, if we're going from because I know Dark Souls 2 is notoriously very hard, like, even among the Dark Souls games.
Yeah.
Trying to be generous with the interpretation, not just saying this game is bad because Dark Souls 2 is bad.
Yeah.
I could see that actually fitting a little bit as a crazy thing. I don't know if 0 is the hardest, but it's definitely one of the hardest on the hardest setting. I think CV might also be quite hard too, from that perspective. I guess what this means is we're waiting for them to remake Resident Evil 0 specifically and call it Scholar of the First Zero.
Scholar of the First Coens.
Yeah, and it's basically the same game, only there's now 42 different more night dudes in it.
Yeah, oh man, somebody needs to make a mod crossover all the monsters. Oh God, I love that. Yeah, I mean, I did come out of the gate very aggressive, but I do see where they're coming from. But I mean, even in that respect, like I would say CV is more like the Dark Souls 2, and it's not bad. CV's not bad. I love CV. But I would say CV is more like the Dark Souls 2 quote of Resident Evil than 0 is. But I mean, there are so many layers to this comment, to this review.
I mean, if that isn't a thumbnail like quote of what is the Dark Souls 2 of Resident Evil? Like...
What is the Dark Souls 2 of Resident Evil? Is it CV? Would you agree with that, Steve?
Yeah, comment section. Is the Dark Souls 2 of Resident Evil 0 or Resident Evil Code Veronica? Answers in the comments. I'm confused.
Or, like, do you have any other recommendations? Like, within the series. Please don't say, like, frickin' Village or anything like that. Those are good games, okay? So was Dark Souls 2. Okay, we'll skip to the next one. So, Steve, we've got Metro Game Central here on Metacritic for the PlayStation 4 version of this game. Take it away.
The least scary and least imaginative Resident Evil returns. And although it's not the worst Resi sequel, it certainly is the most boring.
We're hearing that word a lot, aren't we? Boring.
I'm gonna just hang on. It's both the least scary and least imaginative, but it's not the worst.
Yeah. Where is this metric?
And yet again, it's another 5 out of 10, 50%. What?
Like, it was, as I say, it was very hard for me to find, especially GameCube. There are zero, like, under 20% reviews of the GameCube Zero out there. Like, there's none of them. I think there's only one or two on the HD remaster or other versions, but yeah, I the least scary and imaginative, not the worst Resi sequel. Which one is? I'm very interested in Metro Game Central. Which one is the worst? Put some work into your reviews. Don't just say vacuous words and with nothing to back it up. Say it with your chest. I
might upset a few people here, James, but that actual publication, I have bones to pick with most of the time because they tend to be a bit vitriolic.
Yeah, you can see it.
In some cases, imbecilic. So I'm going to put on a pin in this and say, review the game properly, dumbass. No, that's a bit mean, isn't it?
That was a bit mean.
Too late, I've said it now.
Don't be a big doo-doo head, dummy.
Don't be a big doo-doo head, you. You can't say it's the least this, least that, and then it's not the worst. That makes no sense.
It makes no sense. You call yourself a review site. We're a review site. Also,
putting an apostrophe and then following it with an and. That's not even proper grammar.
Got him. Freaking gotcha.
I mean, when it's a nothing review that's like this, it's just I can't, James. It's infuriating.
Right. We'll move on because I can feel both of our blood pressures going up. Oh wait, that's the last one.
No, there is another one, James. There is.
Oh, is there a final one? The final boss?
In the words of Yoda, there is another.
Well, before we
Yoda, sorry.
Before we go there, I thought we could just talk about what we've just discussed a little bit. So we've learned that that was 9 or 10 reviews. We got the 10th coming actually. We've mostly learned that people who disappointed in this game thinks it was the worst, but also was middling and kind of okay at the same time.
Mixed messages. I'm getting mixed messages.
Yeah, this might be a common occurrence with this series, to be honest.
Just out of curiosity, I know there was a few reviews that we've kind of not had in that are about the item box. So there is that as a concern, but generally speaking, it feels like the general consensus is that this is somehow 5 out of 10, yet boring.
Yeah,
and it adds nothing, but people will still persevere to the end.
No story.
Billy Cohen looks nice.
Yeah, Billy Cohen hot. Yeah, better than Gladiolus.
Little bit. It's a little bit vapid. No one's talked about the aesthetics of the game for me, which annoys me because the art design of Zero is on point. It's very strong. The monsters, granted, I think me and you are probably in a little bit disagreement there. I think some of them are a little bit mid.
I think we even meet halfway because I get what you're saying. But
feel like we're definitely not getting a lot of insight into why it's a bad game, though, are we?
We're not getting any, no. And it was hard, I was looking up, without looking up, because there are, I think, 1,800 reviews on Steam. There are not that as many as that on Metacritic, but it was tough because a lot of them, people wrote paragraphs and paragraphs, and you read those paragraphs, and they're a lot like that guy who was very vitriolic, who we were getting a story out of him where they were just saying the same thing over and over and over again for paragraphs. This game is bad. 1 out of 10, hate it. Also those monkeys, hate them. So it was very tough to actually find reviews because I had to actually delete some as well because a lot of them are also like, this isn't a remaster. It's again, not a review of the game. You're talking about it is the game and they've just improved on it. So to say something isn't a remaster when it very clearly is again vacuous and doesn't really add anything to the conversation.
Added a new a new control scheme. I'm pretty sure it was 4:3, and there is now a widescreen option in the remaster.
Okay.
Obviously, the textures have been touched up for modern systems because otherwise they might be a bit blurry. Allegedly, I can remember kind of mind's eyeing it on the CRT. It looked fine back then too, but then I know they have been AI upscaling textures. The models are all redone to look like a newer, fancier version of the current models. There's definitely been a remastering of the base level assets, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's just a better base game, right?
Yeah,
it's just like they've just done the base game and they made it better.
and Wesker mode and the new control scheme, obviously. That's
right. A lot of people, that's what they want. I mean, that's what I hear all the time on social media. People want to play the same game, they just want it to look better, essentially. All right, let's get into this final one. The big credited source we're going to do to finish this episode off is the verdict from, I think it was 2012 when the HD remaster came out, or around that time. And IGN made a full review, and their review is you might see some familiar things here. So was it me who did the last one? I think it was.
I did.
You did it. Okay. I'll do this one. So yeah, the final verdict from IGN was Resident Evil 0 has the look and feel of a modern game, but its real problems started in 2002 and were never solved. It's a forgettable entry in an outstanding series that just doesn't measure up because of its story problems, overwhelming inventory management, and horrible predictability. Reanimating this limp corpse of a survival game in high definition only brings back the disappointment I felt when I played it for the first time. 6.5 out of 10. 6.5 out of 10 after that scathing verdict.
Feels almost generous, considering, right? Compared to some of the other ones, which have been absolutely more brutal, but then 6 out of 10, 5 out of 10.
Well, I feel like that reanimating this limp corpse of a survival game is really harsh. Man, yeah, we're seeing a lot of, people. We had one other person, and they weren't the only person that said this, but they're the one I picked out, saying it's a forgettable entry. IGN had problems with the story as well, which, again, I do not agree with at all. Predictability, I can agree with that at certain points, but we don't, our first plays of Resident Evil is our first play of Resident Evil. We're supposed to be scared, and there were certain points I saw coming.
I kind of appreciate the wording of it, because it being a survival horror thing was zombie focused. The actual phrase, reanimating the limp corpse of a survival game in high definition, only brings out the disappointment, is you thought about that, didn't you?
Yeah, they really went over that, yeah.
Overwhelming inventory management. I know we're not going to touch on the item boxes, not really, because it's a commonality, but it is a fair statement to make.
Mm.
You have basically 6 slots per character, not necessarily having them all on you all the time. Right. A lot of items are 2 slot. It can be very fussy, but it's still manageable. It just requires a bit of forethought and planning.
Juggling.
Yeah.
Because that's what I felt when you were playing Zero. When I was watching you play Zero, I felt like you were juggling items in that game.
Mm.
That's you were the jester on a train. It's if they ever do a remake, don't make that inventory system so poo poo. At the end of the day,
would they dare to put an item box in RE0? Would that be too heretical to the fan base? All of a sudden you get people complaining, hang on a minute, there weren't item boxes in the original, now you've got them.
Not my Resident Evil 0.
Hashtag not my Resident Evil 0. I have to be honest with you, James, though. I feel like they are very brutal with this game, this review.
Mm-hmm.
I can't disagree with them too much. Not too much.
There is a little bit of truth to everything they put. Yeah.
Yeah, this is unusual, because normally I don't like IGN that much either.
I don't agree with the story thing.
No, definitely not. Predictability. I mean, it's a Resident Evil game. Of course, you go from one place to another, to a lab.
It's built off horror cliches. Of course.
But yeah, I mean, it's true that it does have the look and feel of a modern game. The remaster does, but doesn't play like one. So I give this review a solid IGN out of 10.
IGN out of 10. Well, this has been another episode 2 of Not Recommended. If you enjoyed this video, then consider giving us a recommend by hitting the thumbs up, please. Review the reviews we've reviewed with your own reviews in the comment section below and elsewhere by sharing it around. I'm James. This is Steve. Please love each other. We'll see you next time.
Bye.